Hello. Just a quick video, try to allay some of your fears about the final exam and try to answer what I think are the most common questions. All right, first of all, the exam is 2 hours and we have 80 multiple choice questions, which gives you an average of 90 seconds per question. And it is, as I always try to in a final exam, is to create balance in the test. So I try to have an even representation of important topics, and I try to do a good balance of conceptual and calculations. But my biggest goal when I create a final exam is to make sure that you have enough time to complete the exam and have a little bit of time to go back and look over some of the things. Most students have time at the end to go back through it, but some don't, and some do not finish. So my first advice to you is when you come to a question is to decide, is that question something that you know and can do quickly? All right. If it is, then go ahead and attack that question. Get it out of the way. 2, you know it, but it's going to be tedious or take some time to do. What you might want to do is note it on your scrap paper and then come back to it. 3, you don't know it. And that's the most important one. The ones that you don't know, I would make a note in your scrap paper and then come back to it at the end. And the reason why is that you don't want to fall into what I call the 20-minute trap. The 20-minute trap is where you sit there for 20 minutes, try really hard to work out the problem, and then wind up getting it wrong. And I hate to say it this way, but you can get it wrong much faster than that. And what you want to do is maximize your score, so you don't want to waste time on things that you're not going to score well. The test is not designed like some tests, like the SATs, where they're designed to get harder as you go on. My test isn't. So you may wind up scoring points at the end of the test, but if you wind up wasting 20 minutes on one question, then you're not going to have time to get to those questions that you could have scored. Now, as far as the grading goes, there's a 10% curve. So studies show that students that can retain 80% of the information are doing a pretty good job. So if you get an 80% raw score, then that's going to translate to a 90% actual score. And it's a 1 in 4 multiple choice guess. So with the problems that you don't know and you're leaving them to the end, what I would do is try to eliminate 1 or 2 possible answers that are, one or 2 answers that are just impossible, that you know can't be correct, and then guess among the other 2. I'll give you a good, for instance. There was a question that a lot of you missed on the Chapter 18 and 19 test. I think it was question number 15. And in that question, they said, well, all right, we have a sample of helium, and we have a pressure, we have a temperature, we have a volume, and you could have gone the route of calculating the moles and then added more moles to it and then figured out the new pressure, because they said, let's add 15 grams of helium. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at the 4 answers, you're adding more helium. The other 3 answers, rather, one was the same exact pressure that they gave you, so you can't add more gas and have the pressure be the same. And then answers C and D were a decrease in pressure. How would the pressure go down if you add more helium? So the only possible answer was answer A, and you didn't even need to do a calculation for it. So again, these are things that are strategies that would help you speed up your answering process during the test. Again, the idea being is to maximize the score. Another issue you got to consider is that for your overall grade, 88.8% of your grade is completed before the final. The final exam represents the last 11.2%, and that's based upon school policy for high school. The 4 marking periods, you get 2/9 per marking period. Now, we're not doing marking periods, we're doing overall grade. But that comes out to be 8/9 of your grade. And then the final, is considered like half a marking period, 1/9. So let me give you an example of the impact of the final exam. The final exam really isn't something that's going to bring up your grade, but it's also something that probably shouldn't bring it down too much either. For instance, let's say you have a 90% average going into the final. That means that you have completed, let's do a quick calculation here, 88 times 0.9, 90%, you have banked 79.92 points. Now, let's say your goal is to qualify for AP classes, which means you need an 85%. That means you need to get a 5.08 out of 11.2 on the final. So in order to qualify for AP Chem, if you have an A- average or higher right now, the most that you would have to get on the final exam is a 45.4%, which means that you only have to get 35.4% because you're getting a 10% curve anyway. So again, as far as doing the final, I mean, you want to do well. You want to prove that you know the material, but I'm saying don't lose your mind over it, because if you have an A or an A-, unless you completely, totally bomb the final exam, there's no way you won't qualify for AP Chem. Now, let's say you have a 95 average, and you want to maintain your A, which is a 93% average. Okay, let's work that out. We've completed 88.8% of the course, of which you have a 95% average. That means that you have docked 84.4 points. All right, so to get a 93, which would be an A, you only need to get 8.6 out of 11.2. To maintain your A, you only need to get a 76.8% on the final exam, which means you only have to answer 66.8% of the questions correct, and you still have an A. So again, unless you totally bomb the final, unless you were a fraud and you really didn't know what you were doing and somehow managed to, let's say, cheat your way to an A, you know, the final exam really shouldn't hurt you. Okay. With that said, if you want to make an 85%, in order to be able to qualify for that, if your average is below 82.5, there is no way of doing it, even if you were to get a perfect score. Let's say, for instance, you have an 81% going into the final. So again, let's do the calculation. 88.8% times 0.81. That means you have banked 71.9 points. All right, so to get an 85, you would now need 13.1 out of 11.2. It's not going to happen. So you would have to get a 100% on the final if you have an 82.5 average going into it. Okay. Now, suppose you're just trying to pass. Well, if you're just trying to pass, you need a 65%. Okay. So let's say you only have a 70% average right now. Again, we'll do the calculation. That's 62.2. You need a 65. So that means that you need to score, actually we could round up from 64.5. So really all you need is a 2.3 out of 11.2, which is a 20.5%, which means you only have to answer 10% of the questions correctly. It's a 1 in 4 guess. So you should average, even if you selected C for every question and get a 25%, you still should pass the course. Again, that's why we don't spend time reviewing in class, because now it's up to you. It's up to you to be self-guided and to go through things. So what do I recommend? I recommend that you look at that topic list and say, all right, which topics do I know well? Which ones am I not sure about or don't know? And then take a look at the practice exam. Do the practice exams. And then you'll be able to match up the topics and the chapters where you have weaknesses, and then go back and take a look at your test scores. That will give you an indication of where you had weaknesses as well. And I would only focus on those things, because you're not going to have time to review an entire year's worth of chemistry in a couple of days. All right. Exit interview. Normally we sit and we talk to you and give you some guidance before the end of the course. I don't know that that's going to be possible online, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the exit interview. First of all, to pass the class and get credit, you need a 65% average. What does that mean? That means you have credit for taking the class and you meet the New Jersey state standards, which say that you have to have 3 years of science. 1 year has to be a physical science, 1 year has to be a biological science, and then the third year is up to you. This class counts as 1 year of physical science. So you have met the physical science requirement for graduating high school. However, to qualify for AP Science classes, you need an 85% average. So what if you don't get the 85%? Let's say you're 83, 84, 81. My recommendation to you is to say, look, not all 14 and 15-year-olds are ready to learn a year's worth of chemistry in 5.5 weeks, and especially online where it's difficult to get help and it's difficult to if you had to face me every day, some of the people who have been a little bit lazy and have put off studying to the last minute or didn't put in the work necessary, they would have to face me every day, and I doubt that they would have been as lazy about it. So what you do is you retake it during the regular school year. The grade does not count towards the GPA, the grade point average, which means that the grade itself does not count towards your class ranking or what gets sent out to colleges. If you have a score less than 90%, I'm sorry, wrong symbol. Let's say that you score less than 90%, but you still qualify for AP Science if you have an 85 or above. I would be really careful with this. My experience is that students who get between 85 and 90 tend to do okay in AP Science. They tend to get threes, which means that their averages on tests are around a C average. Unless you're willing to deal with that low of a score on your tests in AP Chem, you might consider retaking the class. But again, that's just a recommendation. That's not a requirement. You certainly have qualified, and who knows? Only you can answer the question as to why you scored an 85 and not a 95. And perhaps maybe you will mature, your work ethic will get better, or perhaps maybe you will learn more science and have a better understanding when you come up to AP Chemistry, for instance. But again, my experience of almost 20 years of teaching AP Chemistry is that students over the summer who score a B or a B plus but yet qualify struggle. Now, my experience, on the other hand, is some reason the 90 seems to be the magical number. If you score a 90 or above, those students tend to get 4s or 5s and do very well in AP Chemistry. So that's my advice to you. It's only advice. You could take it or you could leave it, and it's meant to try to help you, not to hurt you. So good luck with everything. I hope you do well, and I will catch you in AP Chem if that's what you decide to do. All right? Thank you very much.